we know who you were in the courtroom. You know, Frank Baggiano, senior investigator in a variety of roles.
Yeah,
but
sure.
that just doesn't happen. Tell me a little bit about your mom, your dad, and the sort of influence this type aspect of it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if my parents ever envisioned me being where I was going to be.
Yeah.
I had interesting, I grew up in Brooklyn Square, went to St. James School and then Jamestown High School. My mother was the professional of the family. My mother graduated with a bachelor's degree in nursing and became director of nurses at Jamestown General Hospital, and then eventually ended up being an assistant administrator, and that was her career. My father was a typical guy out of the military that worked in a factory, got hurt, actually was a bar owner at one point, owned Miley's. And had that for 5 or 6 years, got out of it, got back in. But that was a difference. And think about that from an Italian family standpoint, where the female is basically, the main. I mean, my dad made money, but my mother was the main earner of the family, and just a sweetheart of a person. Never injected themselves into my career. Never. Never. Grew up in Jamestown with all the boys. You grew up in Jamestown, you know what it's like. I mean, it's a great, back then, it was a great family atmosphere. Jamestown High School was a great place to go to school. It was, downtown Jamestown was a great place. It still is a great place to hang out at. Yeah. Went to college, and stayed here, and there were things. I mean, I grew up with a bunch of guys that are still around. Whenever we see each other, we give each other a hug. And the guys that aren't around anymore, we kind of, think about them a little bit here and there. Played a little sports. Big golfer. Played on Dick Kimball's Jamestown High School golf team, and we were one of the best in the section. And that's, had got an older brother, Joe, who's 2 years older. He's a liquor and wine salesman in Buffalo. I got a sister, Joanne, who is a college professor down in Pittsburgh, and then my brother, Sebi, who's the baby of the family, and Sebi from Chautauqua Institution. Sure. And that's my siblings and stuff.
Was there an aha moment? You went to Jamestown High School. Where'd you go to college?
Yeah.
JCC?
JCC for 2 years.
Yep.
Didn't know what I wanted to do. Was thinking, the medical field. And was thinking about, and that wasn't getting pushed from my mother at all. Was thinking about going into optometry, and was at JCC for 2 years. And while I was at JCC, ran into a friend of mine who worked for the ambulance service in Jamestown, and said, "Hey, we're looking for part-time guys. You want to make a little money on the side?" So I went and got my EMT and worked for Tom Hurley at Chautauqua County Ambulance Service while I was going to JCC, and even when I went to Fredonia, and that kind of got me more into the police, I guess you would say, aspect of it. Did that. Also bartended at the Red Coach. A lot of life experiences. Yep. Between making drinks behind a bar and chasing ambulances, you see both sides of the spectrum of life.
Yeah.
And transferred from JCC to Fredonia. Was looking at, like I said, looking at optometry, but at the time I think there were 6 optometry colleges in the United States. And it was harder to get into than being a dermatologist. I mean, it was that. So I thought, And while my last year at JCC, I took a constitutional law class from Bill Arison. And I think it was right around the time that he was trying the Susan Hallett case. Yeah. Just a brilliant man, just a nice guy, and that kind of led me that way. So when I went to Fredonia, I got a bachelor's degree in law, justice, and society. It's like, what the heck's that, my senior year, I did an internship with the Jamestown Police Department. Almost full-time, 3 days a week. 2 days a week, I was in the Juvenile Bureau.
Palladino, the chief then?
Yes. Yeah. Betty Barron.
Yeah.
Joe Welch. Ed Ullman, who, by the way, ended up being my father-in-law. That was Monday, Wednesdays, and on Fridays I was in the patrol car with the one man, and that kind of piqued my interest. Mm-hmm. It was right around that time that getting employment was tough, so they had the CETA program. I don't know if you remember that at all. It was a government. And they funneled you to an individual who helped you find a job. And he said to me, you know, Department of Social Services is moving towards ferreting out welfare fraud and stuff like that. They got some openings, you might be interested. Let me put you there. Well, they put me there, took the test, passed it, and got thrown right into doing welfare fraud investigations for the Department of Social Services. I still tell everybody this story that I got my first paycheck and I looked and I said, what the hell is this? You know, so what do you mean? I said, I make this much in tips at the bread coach. You know, and did that, and that's how I got to know John Ward, and I worked with Jimmy Burns of the state police because they had to make their arrest, and you know, I always tell everybody sometimes you got to be at the right place at the right time. Career-wise, I was always at the right place at the right time. When I started working for the Department of Social Services doing welfare fraud investigations, the computer age was just starting to come around, and they were doing Social Security income withdrawals matches to the welfare rolls. So they were able to link the two computers. So I would get printouts. It's like all of a sudden Frank Baggiano is this genius. How's he catching these people that are working? Well, I'm catching them because I'm working because they're sending me a printout telling me that Greg Peterson's been working at this factory for the past year and a half, and him and his family are on public assistance. So we used to do what we called welfare roundups, and with Jim Burns and John Ward, and we do secret indictments with the DA's office, and then go around and arrest 5, 6 people, do this big blast in the paper, and then everyone that was working and on public assistance would disappear. And I did that for 2 years, well, a little short of 2 years.
Yeah.
And just, you know, it was interesting. It was a great thing. We had some interesting cases, and then Paul Andrews had left the public defender's office and had gone to law school, and they posted a position as an investigator with the public defender's office, and it was a pay grade increase, substantial. And I thought, I'll put my app in. This may be something I wanted to do. I was thinking about going to do something else, and interviewed with Richard Slater and Kevin Laumer, and got the job, and started with them right away, and went from investigator to senior investigator, and
tell me,
did that for 18 years.
What's a typical day? You were hired by Richard and Kevin, and all of a sudden does a file come in on their desk and say, "Here, Frank, find out what you can about it."
Well, it changed throughout the years because their caseload increased. When I first started working there, we could the initial part of my job was interviewing the new people at the jail. But you used to be able to walk into the jail, go into the booking room, and there'd be a board up there with names on it, and you could see the new people that were there got arrested, and I would take those, I'd interview those people, a file would be created, and that would go to the attorneys. And I think, we were doing some office interviews. And that's the way the file got generated. And I did that probably for about 3 years. We got real busy, and we ended up pulling teeth to get the legislature to give us a position to have someone actually go over the jail full time and interview people. And we hired, and I slid up to a senior investigator position. So I was quasi office administration and all major felony investigations. So what they would do is, hey, Frank, we've got this case, let's talk about it and see what we need to do. And that's what I would do.
So when you first few years, and you're the guy who comes out on behalf of the county, you're paid by the county.
The county, oh yeah, absolutely.
Pays you, and then all of a sudden you're the guy's arrested. He may have been indicted and arrested, and you walk in and you got to introduce yourself and curry understanding
for them to tell their story? How does that happen?
I think, there were simpler times then.
Yeah.
People being incarcerated meant something. It wasn't like a Sunday school.
Yeah.
So everyone pretty much was very, very cooperative, and we tried to explain to, I would try to explain to them, listen, this is a procedure that you go through. The misdemeanors were a cakewalk. The felonies you had to explain to the people, and this is who your attorney's going to be, and they will either meet you before or meet you, and we go from there. Like I said, simpler times. And then obviously as times went on and things changed, things got a little more serious, and the clientele got a little more serious and dangerous. But my role was the initial contact, and then the follow-up investigations. And then once we got really busy, I ended up basically sticking to office administration on the side. We had a public defender. Richard was a public defender. We had brilliant minds there. And then doing the major felony stuff, and then trial assistant. I was kind of say, the second chair, but non-attorney at all the major felony trials with the PD's office.
Well, that's my image of you, as being their second chair.
Right.
I mean, there's the public defenders, whoever that happens to be. Slater certainly in the early. In fact, let's go through a little bit of the list of people you worked with.
Sure.
As far as public defenders and assistant public defenders.
I got hired by Richard. Couldn't have been there a week and a half where we had a trial coming up. Got thrown right into it. It was an unfortunate incident where a maid at the Holiday Inn was raped by our client. And did that trial like, boom, it was just like, I don't think. So Richard was there. I think I got hired in July of 97. Must have been a legislative election. The Democrats won, and Eddie Fagan came in. Eddie was there for 2 years, and then the Republicans came back. No, I take it back. The Democrats were in. Eddie fell out of favor with the Democrats. What happened with Ed was he had represented Bob Sawyer, not in the murder case that he had. Bob Sawyer was the homicide up at Hogan's Hut. But he represented him in a civil action against the county because they had searched his jail cell. So he was suing the county over some issue, and Ed decided he was going to represent him. Well, I don't know if you recall this, but the county ended up passing a law that said if you're an employee and you're an attorney of the county, you cannot sue us. That was actually the Ed Fagan rule. So that caused Ed to fall out of favor with the Democrats. So at the end of 2 years, they gave Ed the heave-ho and brought Jerry in. Jerry Hyde, as a short period of time. Jerry did a nice job. Matter of fact, he tried one felony case and got an acquittal, and left and became DSS attorney. So there was a vacancy for about 3-4 months. The Republicans won, reappointed Richard Slater, who was fantastic, and I left there when Richard was still public defender. After I did 19 years with the public defender's office.
Well, during that time period, obviously you saw a lot.
Yeah.
And one of the things that some of the attorneys have talked about, back to one of your bosses, Ed Fagan, is that he not only fell out of favor perhaps with the Democrats, but also never really was in good stead with Judge Adams. Did you capture that? Did you sense all that?
Ed, I guess tell you this straight up. If I was ever arrested for a felony, Ed Fagan would be the first attorney that I'd go in and see. The guy was just a brilliant mind. Ed could walk into a courtroom. Matter of fact, I tell you a great Ed Fagan story. We're trying. He's trying this case, and Ken Wilber And Ed wasn't afraid to spend county money on experts. Ken Wilbur was a young man that was discharged from the Marines, was out hunting in the woods up in Arkwright, and ended up shooting a husband and wife in the woods and their dog. And they found the kid. Ed decides he's going to, and the kid's charged with 2 counts of first or second degree murder and a bunch of other things. And Ed basically, and this was part of my job, was hiring experts and finding experts. He said, we're going to hypnotize this kid, and we're also going to find an expert, psychologist also. So we hired, geez, I can't remember the guy's name, a hypnotist. I mean, a legitimate guy, not some stage hypnotist that that you see at the carnival. Flew him in from, God, I can't remember where. Yeah. Transported the young man to Fredonia State, where they had a recording studio, and had this hypnotist hypnotize this kid and had him relive the incident. It was incredible. And I thought, I mean, I'm sure everybody says, hypnotist, relive. The details that came out. I mean, the kid, I remember one thing specifically. He talked about climbing over the fence with his gun, because he used to walk in the woods by himself, and catching his pants on the corner of a fence and doing a little rip in the left leg. I mean, it was just incredible. So Eddie did that. Then Eddie hires a psychologist, and he's trying the case. Now, Eddie was the kind of guy that, as an attorney, you probably always wanted to be able to do. He could walk in and want a specific answer at question 15, and Ed would work his way up to question 15. And when he asked question 15, it was just a progression to get the proper answer. Yeah. Boom. Well, we had a shrink basically say, kid's got some issues, blah, 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 he's a little crazy. So the DA always hires somebody to refute that. So Leetown Adams used to chew behind the bench. I'm sure a lot of guys knew that. He had a little spittoon and things like that. Eddie would always try to tweak him a little bit and object right when Judge Adams had a little chew and was spitting. And Ed goes off on this guy, the prosecution psychiatrist. And I still remember the statement because the guy was a DO, not an MD. And he says to the guy, as Adams is getting madder and madder at the questioning, says the guy, so, doctor, between treating the flu and cutting a few hangnails here and there, you throw a little psychiatry in on the side. Well, and now all of a sudden Adams goes at him, and they're screaming and yelling, and Adams is stomping off the bench, and Eddie's going at him.
Spectacle.
He's the best. He was the best. He used to tell me, we'd go into the trial, and we had trial notebooks, and we had all the witnesses, and he used to say, because my office had the law books behind, he says, grab a couple of those, bring them in. Just put them on a corner at the table. He wanted the prosecution to think that that's what we were doing, but just brilliant. I don't know where the animosity came between him and Leetown Adams. I mean, there was a mutual respect because they were both brilliant individuals, but. I don't know what it came, but Ed knew how to tweak somebody if he needed to.
You're the investigator, man. So you're out in the field, or you're the gathering data and information. Mm-hmm. You're feeding the public defender, and the public defender is right there. Prosecution's over there. And the temperature rises every once in a while, as some of you just indicated. Did you kind of fear, because your defendant's right there? I mean, your second seat, and just in the sequence of sitting.
Yeah.
I mean, you're there. Did you get a sense of any?
Usually not in the trials or anything. I mean, the progression was, the prosecution always sat closest to the jury. Right. Obviously, was a strategic type of thing. And then the defense attorney, the client, and then I sat on the edge. But there were always, two court security guys right behind him. I don't ever remember anybody really. There might have been one incident. We had a gentleman spit at one of our attorneys. Yeah. But I don't, never any fear of any of these guys that they would do anything. They knew we were there to help them. So I think they knew not to get us upset with them.
But at the same time, if results, and often they did, just because you got public defenders, you're sort of already got a bucket of information against you. Have they have an attitude towards you guys as not being a good defense or not defending their rights to the best of their ability? Because
every once in a while. Yeah. Every once in a while you would get someone, you're a public defender. But usually not. The guys in the public defender's office, in my opinion, were the best criminal defense attorneys in the county and almost outside the county. Anyone that, every once in a while, the drugs started kind of taking over a little bit, and there were a couple attorneys up in Buffalo that were the big shot drug lawyers, and I can remember at least 2 occasions where we had drug clients and cut the deal with them, and their families were upset, and they went out and laid out a bunch of dope for a private attorney up in Buffalo, 2 guys in particular, who would file an omnibus motion this thick that came right out of their computers and go walking in, and after spending $10,000, got the same deal that we had for them. Yeah. And our guys were pioneers in defense strategy. Kevin Laumer, Slater, Jimmy Pelletier. I'm sure I'm missing some guys here, but Bruce Carpenter, brilliant mind. Different kind of dude, but brilliant mind.
Well, you mentioned something there about defense strategies on the cutting edge. Give me an example or two of what it is that perhaps Kevin or Bruce they all are known. They're all known for their minds.
Right.
But we're not in the pits.
Well, everybody had, Richard Slater, brilliant guy, and well-educated, well-spoken. He had a little fire in his belly when it came to his strategy. I mean, he lived and breathed trial time. Richard was like, wow, you got to calm down a little bit. He lived and breathed trial time, and was quasi-judicial, not an Ed Fagan aggressive, quasi, laid back. Kevin Laumer, on the other hand, was methodical. Just, here's the evidence, this is a thing. Strategic-wise, it all depended on the case. Bruce Carpenter was this huge, flamboyant kind of guy. Now, I should say that. He was in the public defender's office for 6 months when I first came in, and then he was gone. But saw him try some things, Yeah, this is Chautauqua County. Aggressiveness as an attorney doesn't fare well with the people here. Strategic-wise, it all depended on the case. Eddie Fagan, that example of hiring those experts. That kid ended up getting convicted of either 1st or 2nd degree manslaughter. Did 15 years and got out. Yeah. Where he was facing 2 counts of 2nd degree murder. Richard was big on evidentiary sort of things. Wanted to make sure that everything was done to the letter of the law by the police. Kevin the same way. And by doing what they did, they earned the mutual respect of prosecuting attorneys, private attorneys, and their clients, I think.
Your offices were next to each other.
Right across the hall. Yeah. Right across. The grand jury room was right across from my office. We used to drive Tony Caprino and John Ward nuts because I could see the witnesses coming in and out. So,
And so relationship-wise,
obviously pre-trial, there's conversation, there's
Yeah.
courtroom conversation, water cooler conversation. When you got to trial, though, I mean, when it's showtime, and you got a jury out there, did you guys interact much during that time period? Was there was a Chinese wall?
There was a Chinese wall there.
Yeah.
There was absolutely respect between each other. No, it was never personal. Never got personal. And that gave me a lot of respect and taught me a lot as a young individual what you should be doing in life, because you got two adversaries, but never got personal. It was always, but there were times when if the DA tried to throw a little extra evidence in there that we didn't receive at pre-trial, then we get a little fired up, or if we tried to pull some quick ones, which every once in a while you had to do it. Sometimes you just had to throw it up and see what happens, and throw it against the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah. So during that time period, you had a 19-year run in the public defender's office. Obviously, across the hall was the DA. And was John principally the DA during that time period?
John was, principally the DA. We eventually did move over to the other building.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm trying to think when John got elected. Yeah, it was probably late in my PD career, it was nothing to go to parties with these guys or the police or, have lunch with them. Like I said, it was never personal. And John, as far as I was concerned, one of the best prosecutors around. Him, Neil Robinson, brilliant, just brilliant. Bill Foley, another guy. Ron Gibb was there, but Ron really never tried much. I don't know how long he was in the DA's office before he left. But
did Bob Seidel try much? Or was he?
Bob Seidel mostly was into the misdemeanors.
Okay.
I don't remember. Every once in a while he may have grabbed low-grade felonies. I forgot about Bob Seidel. Yeah, St. Clairville boy.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. He was a great guy. I'm sure I'm leaving some guys out, but Dave Stapleton.
Yeah.
Was assistant public defender. Bob Van Every was an assistant public defender.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Was Tripp part of that world?
Tripp was in the DA's office.
Okay.
Yeah. Tripp was in the DA's office. What happened? Now they're all full time, I guess. But everybody was part time except for probably John Ward was the only full time prosecutor, public defender.
Yeah.
And everybody was part time. They had offices, and they would split their time, and then that's how they survived economically. These guys.
And occasionally, when there were change of administrations, they would swap locations, which created conflicts of interest.
Yeah. Every once in a while, that happened just initially. Probably, and I know it happened when Dave Foley was elected. I think they had a problem there, but and I think there probably was an issue when I'm sure there was. There was an issue when John Ward became the county court judge with anything that he was involved with in the DA's office. So
you are the senior investigator with the public defender's office. Then there's a guy over there in the DA's named Caprino.
Yeah.
Tony Caprino. And frankly, I see John Ward and Tony Caprino kind of glove in hand.
Yeah.
Was that accurate?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
I believe so. They just, they were, inseparable.
Yeah.
And Tony was an incredible investigator, and he knew, he had this great field of police officers that he directed when it came time to major felonies. You got to remember, if a homicide occurred, John got a call, Tony got a call, they were on the scene and they were directing everything, telling people what to do. Things are different than that. We had, that's pretty much what they did. We, I think Tony was there after John left, yeah.
Did your two paths cross much other than you knew each other professionally, but...
Oh, yeah, I knew Tony from... Tony was good friends with my parents, and grew up with that crew of people. He and I held the same titles, had little different roles, but we were both the trial assistant. My role in trials, whenever major felony stuff, the first thing, the police did all the groundwork. So the first thing we would do is I would take all the witness statements and I would go and re-interview witnesses to see if, and then obviously we would try to, if our client advised us that there was an alibi, we would go interview their alibi witnesses or take crime scene photos, or if there was a defense, we'd figure out what we were going to do at that time. It was a great job and great people to work with.
When you interview, just the process.
Yeah.
Notepad, do you get dictation equipment? Do you have something saying, I'm going to record you here?
Witnesses, yes. Clients, no.
Yeah.
Clients, no. Witnesses, absolutely. I mean, I used to, my standard line, I have business, my standard line used to be, Mr. Peterson, I'm Frank Baggiano, I'm the senior investigator with the Public Defender's Office. We represent blah, blah, blah. I'm here to interview regarding the case and I'm going to record it. Click. We recorded it. And then that would go to the secretary who would transcribe it. Not all the time. I mean, the short stuff, no. But if there was a key witness, I mean, there were a lot of people that said, I'm not going to talk to you. Your client's a dirtbag, and okay, well, whatever. That's your choice. I'm just here to get the word. And the police understood that. They knew that my job was just to re-interview people. I wasn't looking to undermine or discredit what the work they had done. They knew what my job was. Most of them knew what my job was. I mean, there were a couple of those guys out there that we just butted heads. And
your job was to make him look silly.
No. That's what they thought. Yeah, I had one guy. It was during the Sawyer case. Who he could never understand my role. He was the undersheriff. Could never understand my role. He hated me from the day I walked in the office. And he tried to get me arrested on the Sawyer case because he said that I had introduced myself to a witness as a police officer. Okay, and I remember, I'll never forget this, John Ward coming down the hall and saying, hey, your cousin, called him, your cousin wants me to get you arrested, right? I said, well, what happened? So he told me. Now, the guy I had interviewed, I knew, right? I said, John, come here. I took him into my office. I slid the statement in front of him, and the headline is, I'm Frank Baggiano, I'm the senior. I said, but do me a favor. Don't tell him you have this, But he was the only one. Everybody else. I mean, you got to remember. I did a little work with JPD, so those guys knew me. My father-in-law was JPD. I knew them.
Yeah.
I had worked with the state police through Jim Burns. The local police departments did nice. It was just most of the sheriff's guys. The gumshoe thing just wasn't there.
Yeah.
Wasn't there, and I wasn't into that sort of thing.
Sitting where you were, you had an eyewitness to activity. Most of the time, I suspect Leetown Adams was the county court. Then Ward.
Yeah.
So what was your impression of Judge Adams as a presiding judge? Because of course, my wife worked.
Yep, she was his law clerk. Yep.
Law clerk, as well as she did Judge Cass. So she had other ringside seat, if you will, a different impression. So what was yours? Everybody has an impression.
He was. I got to tell you what. He treated me as an equal, and I always respected him for that. Even though I was a non-attorney that was always in on pretrial conferences like Tony was, and in the courtrooms, and a lot of times I would go. We used to do discovery, where they just laid everything out, and the attorney guy would go. He always treated me as an equal, which gave me a tremendous respect for the man, and brilliant mind. Phi Beta Cap, I believe. He always wore the little chain, right? Didn't he? Just I thought he was fair. I never knew him to show any animosity towards anyone. As long as you respected him. And I don't know how you couldn't. I don't know how you couldn't. I still remember going to his funeral. I don't know if you went to his funeral. And remember, and we're all locked in. It's typical Leetown Adams, right? We're in a church in Silver Creek, and it's 95 degrees, no air conditioning, and all the windows and doors are closed. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like, okay, boys, I'm still here. So, John Ward, great. I love John. I mean, we had a good relationship and a personal relationship also. And, there were times at the end of jury verdicts, we'd go out and have a beer. Next day was the same thing. Or that, the following Friday, I'd be at a picnic with them or the bar association. No, they're just fantastic.
Tell me about verdict time. So you close the cases, and they let the jury out to decide. Where do you go? And are you just killing time, foot up on the desk?
We usually, our offices were very close to the courtroom, as were the DA's office, and we just went back to the office and hung out. Now, if it was at night, that was a different story. But it was an interesting time. You're waiting for the verdict. You never knew what they were going to do.
Yeah.
I remember sitting there one time and getting an acquittal, and I looked at the defense attorney. I said, "Where'd that come from?"
Yeah.
And the jurors looking disgusted with our client, upset with our client, but let him go. Did the right thing. There wasn't sufficient evidence. So.
Did you guys it's a pre-mortem, I don't even say a post-mortem, once you know the verdict, but in that gap time, you kind of put odds on what it is that you expect?
No, we never, there used to be a general rule, if they come in within the first hour, your guy was guilty.
Yeah.
And as time progressed, you thought you had a shot. No, I don't, we never paced. I don't think the attorneys ever paced. It was just, no. I don't ever recall a case that we had a guy who was 100% innocent and we were worried he was going to prison.
Yeah.
We did have a case. Neil Robinson was the DA, and the guy kept saying, "I'm innocent, I'm innocent, I'm innocent." I think Dave Stapleton tried it. We're sitting next to Dave and the client, and it was a real low-grade forgery. This guy insisted. We went to trial, and the witness said he knew the guy, so there was no lineup, no hearing, nothing. And Neil asked the victim on the stand, "Can you point Mr. Such and Such out to me?" He looked around and he said, "He's not here. He's not here." And the guy says, "See, I told you."
Wow.
And all of a sudden, it was a state police case, and they didn't do their due diligence, but had a quick meeting, and case was over with.
Oh, wow.
But think about it. Somebody says, "Yeah, sure. Greg Peterson handed me this forged check," and and they said, "Oh, there's Greg Peterson." Well, it wasn't the Greg Peterson.
That's why.
Yeah, yep. It was incredible. I'm pretty sure it was Dave Stapleton.
Yeah. Now I'm going to have to bring David in.
I think it was him, yeah.
Talking about just cases, you were there. Were there a few kind of highlight real cases where, as you're looking back and saying, let me tell you a couple instances, Greg.
Bob Sawyer.
Mm-hmm.
He'd come back for retrial, and Kevin was doing it, and we had filed a change of venue motion. And it was a simple thing, because we had a volume like this of newspaper articles attached to the record that we sent up to the appellate division. Got reversed. Next thing we know, we're traveling up in Buffalo trying a thing in February in sub-zero weather. We're walking from the hotel there with suitcases, and Sawyer, very interesting individual. There's one guy you just kind of like, you never know if he's going to do anything. You never know if he's going to do anything. We had to try it in front of Judge Marshall, the old judge, the original Judge Marshall up in Buffalo, and Dalton Burgett was a special prosecutor. And there were just volumes of evidence against this guy, just volumes of evidence. And there was one witness in particular. He had a .41 Magnum, which was just like a cannon, and they could never figure out where it came from. And during the trial, apparently somebody was watching the court coverage on TV or something. Guy lived in Warren and said, "Hey, I had a .41 Magnum stolen out of my dining room drawer, and this guy laid my carpet." And that's how they tied it. Anyway, we tried that. I mean, it was just, there was no shot at this thing. And I remember Judge Marshall, well, first of all, when they went to read the verdict, these two monster Erie County Sheriff's deputies go and stand behind him. And they read the verdict and it's sentencing, and Judge Marshall looks at him and says, and this is right around the time that the New York State Legislature was talking about throwing in the death penalty, and he said, "If I had alternative sentences to impose on you, Mr. Sawyer, I would definitely do them to you in this case." That was one. A couple, a lot of them, just a couple of bad stuff that I don't like recalling, just horrendous crimes. The homicides, a murder for hire. I mean, how often do you hear about that?
Yeah.
Joe Dobos, Otto Krasnowitz, and Michael Lafferty. That was an interesting case. That was real interesting. Joe Dobos was a ex-Marine, suffered from Agent Orange. And this Michael Lafferty was romantically involved with some girl. And for I don't know how they linked up, but somehow he ends up in a barber shop in Buffalo and makes a statement like, "Yeah, I like to have my girlfriend's boyfriend whacked or something." And next thing you know, he's hiring Joe Dobos and Otto Krasnowitz, bless you, Krasnowitz. And Dobos, huge guy. Getting in a car, chasing this guy down. He's riding a motorcycle down in Villanova. Krasnowitz is driving, and Dobos is in the passenger seat and sticks a 12-gauge shotgun with buckshot in it and shoots the guy in the back and kills him. Never went to trial. Dobos never went to trial. Never went to trial. He pled. Ed Fagan represented him. But that's what he did. The other one that really stuck in my mind, we didn't go to trial. We had a carnival worker kill a guy. Must have been some mini carnival up in Dunkirk. And they'd gotten in a fight, a couple carnies, and he killed him in the trailer. And guy's in jail. And I never forget him saying that. He says, "You guys got this was when they had the death penalty in New York State. You have the death penalty in New York State, right?" I said, "Yeah." But kind of hard to get to. I want to plead. I said, "What?" He says, "I want to plead guilty." He says, I don't want to be put to death." So I can't remember, I think Richard might have been the attorney, and he talked to the guy and, just write down the line, everything. This is what's going to happen. This is what's going to... Guy was deathly afraid, thinking he was going to be executed, and pled guilty. Pled guilty. There was I don't know how many, there are some sad homicide cases, most of them, husband and wife, bunch of drunken friends. It was an accident.
The one at Frewsburg comes to mind. Were you in the office then as public defenders when there's a family taken out in the Frewsburg area?
That was... Oh, no, I was gone by then. Okay. That's the one that's just recently been up on appeal or something? Yeah, that was no. That was well after my time. That was in family court by then.
So, what was the decision there to kind of move from one area in the courthouse to working with the family?
Yeah, after the amount of time in the public defender's office and dealing with the people that I dealt with, it hardens you. It really does. I mean, there isn't any doubt in my mind that I'm the person I am today, and how I react today is because of my occupation in the public defender's office. And I'm sure police officers will tell you the same thing. But I was kind of looking at getting out. I had a couple of opportunities in the private industry that paid substantially more, and I had met. Well, Lynn Hartley and Kevin Lawmer are step brothers, and Kevin's one of my best friends, and I knew Lynn and some other things, and I had Dave Turnbull was my intern in the public defender's office when he was at JCC. Yeah. So Noma, the chief clerk of family court, retires. Noma. Yeah. Dave's going to get the chief clerk's job. So he says to me, "Hey, you know what? You want to be my assistant?" And I'd always looked up to Autumn Slater, the chief clerk of circuit court, and thought, "Yeah, that'd be a great job for me." It pays substantially more, and it's just very prestigious. So, make a long story short, I put my application in as deputy chief clerk of family court because I really wanted to get out of the public defense. Basically, it had it, and interviewed, and it really went into the interview with the, if I get it, I get it. I don't. No big deal. I got a great job in the PD's office and stuck it. And like I said, Lynn was a family court judge. Dave Turnbull, Harry Brand was the administrative assistant. Yeah, Harry. I loved Harry. And I got the deputy chief clerk's job. And then Dave moves up to, they called it hearing examiner back then. What the heck are they called now? Support magistrates. And the chief clerk's position opens up. Judge Clare had gotten elected, and I had was acting chief clerk for a number, and then slid into that, and it was just a great career move. A lot of people want to be chief clerks of these courts because they're great. They don't realize the work that's involved, but they're great jobs. Yeah. They're just very rewarding too. Family court. And I got to tell you, when I was in the public defender's office, we did family court work too. I didn't want to have anything to do with stay away from family court. Pete Clark was our family court attorney, and then Charlie Loveland.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I remember Charlie coming in trying to get me to do things for family court, go out and do them, and I absolutely refused. Yeah. So I ended up in family court and learned a lot about the goings on in family court. And it was tough. It was tough. I went from being in the field to being in an office, 9 to 5. Greatest job in the world, most rewarding job. Lynn Hartley, brilliant guy. He was only there for about a year and a half. And then Judith Clare, just knowledgeable, compassionate, very driven, and just, when you work for her, you work for her. She wanted you to, if she wanted something done, you had to do it. But she would listen to your side of things if it was questionable. It was a great job.
Yeah. Family court. I did interview Judith.
Oh, okay.
And the difficulty of the relationships, because now you're dealing with families. Now you're getting some of that in the PADs, but now it's husband, wife, children. Did that pull at your emotions when the day is done? Could you walk away from this?
Well, you got to remember, as chief clerk, I was more of an office administrator. I had 14 staff. Believe it or not, the support magistrates reported to me, and the other, and so I never dealt one-on-one with the people. I very seldom would I go in a courtroom and sit through a family court trial. I would sit through intake calendars every once in a while to get a feel of what was going on. Couldn't sit through a family court trial. That was like watching paint dry compared to what was going on in the PD's office. So I didn't. There were cases. I loved adoptions. That's good. That's fun. I loved adoptions. Got real active in domestic violence. The Salvation Army women, domestic violence people. When Judge Clare came in, we had a great discussion. And it was, when they come in the door, we're going to take their initial statement, and we are going to make sure that these individuals are protected and given the opportunity to come in the courtroom as soon as they can. And that's what we did. I mean, that was a very rewarding. Unfortunately, you know, I don't like throwing percentages out, but probably 30-40% never showed up for the second court after we issued orders of protection. Adoptions were fun. We had a homicide case in family court. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it was really, and I got to tell you, we had two young men. I think one was 14 and one was 16, stabbed to death. Another, he was like 18 or 19. It was up in Cassadaga area. Very well-known Cassadaga family. And he got arrested December 23rd. The one kid.
Yeah.
Great family, you know. The young man was the oddball of the family, or just you know, a follower. Had never spent a night at anyone else's house. Never done anything. Unfortunately, he befriends this kid who takes him with him, and they brutally murder this guy. And that kind of stuck with me a little bit, but my criminal background helped me because the county attorney prosecutes those. And they were trying to do some things that I didn't think were kosher, and Judge Claire and I had some discussions.
Yeah.
But we, you know, drug treatment court, best thing that ever happened to people in Chautauqua County. We had a great team, great drug team, and tremendous success, compliments of Judge Claire and her team. It was nice to see families reunited like that. The graduation ceremonies were just, there wasn't a dry eye in the place, you know. So that was it. And the court complex was something that I enjoyed doing.
Yeah. Give me your best Charlie Loveland story.
Charlie Loveland story. Charlie Loveland used to walk. Charlie used to love to schedule a trial in family court, because he was doing schedule a trial in family court. Give us subpoenas for witnesses. Have the witnesses show up, and have settled the case 2 hours before. So we used to, you know, the wrath of witnesses, and you know, I don't need to tell you, we have teachers, we have professionals, and all of a sudden they're showing up in court, and we had to do that. But Charlie was a very, very dedicated individual, you know, and just a just big assuming man, you know, but heart of gold.
Yeah.
Guy had a heart of gold, you know.
You had to love him. Every time he had CLEs, or he worked with Cindy a lot, and a little bit of myself, but he was a presence. He was just a presence.
Yeah. Didn't want to have anything to do with criminal court. Didn't want to touch it.
Charlie?
Yeah. He not when I was there. You know, he was strictly family court, and I don't know. Did he leave? No, I think he was there when I retired. When I left the public defender's office. Took a special person to be the family court public defender. And I remember we were doing 60 cases a year, maybe. That went to 120 to 180, and you know, nobody wanted to give family court defense counsel resources. No, but Charlie handled every case individually, and took his time and made sure that everyone understood what his position was. Yeah. Made it very clear what his position was.
Yeah. I'm just going to draw closure here, Frank.
Okay, sure.
I'm just going to throw this in front of you, and
okay.
if any person jumps out where you'd say, I forgot to mention this story, a vignette or two, feel free.
Well, you know, Paul Andrews I talked about. Phil Calla, I loved working with Phil. Phil would hold his own against any client or attorney.
Yeah.
You know, and brilliant. Judge Clare, obviously. I'm trying to think. I actually worked for Wayne Herrick. Wayne Herrick was the DSS attorney when I first got hired. John Goodell, the champion of the poor. I mean, John would take any case, anytime. Dick Pheasant worked with Dick, all those other guys, Phil Erickson. Judge Cass, they broke the mold. He is, if I ever come back in another life, I want to be like Willard Cass. The guy's the consummate professional. He cared about everything, knew how to handle things, was very firm. He worked in family court. You remember after he retired from being circuit court judge, he was our judicial hearing officer. And he used to tell me, Frank, you schedule 2 trials every day for me, 10 o'clock and 11:30. And he took care of that great guy. Bob Van Every, I obviously worked with him. Bev Unger was our law clerk almost the whole time I was there. Jimmy Subject and I were good friends. I thought he was a great DA, Stapleton. I'm sure there's some guys. Brian York actually worked in the PD's office for a short period of time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just like real short. Sure. And then there's that Cynthia Peterson person, you know. She's just a piece. John Plum was in the public defender's office for a very short period. Donnie Lynn. Oh, what a great guy.
Yeah.
God bless his soul, man. I love Don. Don did family court. That's what happened. Don did family court after Charlie left. Yeah. Don did family court after Charlie left. Kevin Laumer's, very, very good friend of mine. We still golf together 3 days a week, and brilliant mind. Kenny Lasker, miss him. I don't know. John Lemancuso, Judge Lemancuso, very good friend of mine. Grew up together. Actually helped him out on a criminal case that he had when he was with Lucian Ledestro, and then helped him along. And I remember he tried a crazy criminal case in county court, and interesting defense that I won't talk about, but he's great. And Judge Clare, she's great. I'm sure I'm missing somebody here, but and the young guys. I mean, this is just the Jamestown bar that you have here.
Yeah.
Judge Gerasi, Judge Alessi. What a kind and intelligent man.
Yeah.
I mean, really. And Lynn Hartley, Judge Adams. Judge Ricotta I knew briefly. My sister Joanne went to St. Mary's College, and Judge Ricotta's son went to Notre Dame, so they used to ride together back and forth to Indiana. So that's how I got to know Judge Ricotta. And his the characters were always the court stenographers.
Yeah.
Paul Keating and oh my God, Tom Muldowney.
Muldowney.
Yeah, Muldoon was Judge Ricotta's.
Yeah.
Those guys, there's the ones you need to talk to. Oh my God. Oh yeah.
We had an event. You may have attended where we had the 3 stenographers.
Oh no.
It was Jerry, Tom,
okay.
and Paul, and they were up on and I was asking questions, but ultimately it was the 3 of them. And Jerry, of course, he's as shy as he is. He's a raconteur, but Paul, it was just terrific to have the 3 of them there tell war stories.
Paul Keating was the
last.
Yeah. I remember one time a court stenographer intern came in the courtroom during something going on, and she was sitting back there doing this, and Paul Keating was doing it. Well, Judge Adams would have none of it. I'm not having a second person in this courtroom, and Paul never missed a beat. Great baseball guy, right? Oh, he lived and breathed baseball.
He did.
Yeah.
Yeah, he and Cindy, we'd get together and have dinner and stuff.
Okay, great. Is he still around?
He just passed it.
That's what I thought.
But yeah, Paul, in fact, as an aside note, his brother was my patent teacher at law school down in
I didn't know that.
Dickinson.
Yeah.
Small world.
Yeah. The family courts now have gone away from court stenographers. Everything's recorded now, which is sad, but economically, I think it was a way to go. So, but they were great. I know you want to wrap this up pretty quick, but in closing, I got to tell you what, I was very, very fortunate, and probably as far as career-wise go, I don't think I could have been any more fortunate to do what I did, work with the people that I worked with, and had the success that we had. In Chautauqua County and in Jamestown, and I was treated as an equal with the attorneys, which I was never looked down upon, which I am just very, very grateful for.
So your name has come up frequently among them.
I'm sure there's good things and bad things.
All good. Well, you knew you were coming in today, Frank, and
sure.
Maybe as a closing question. And so therefore you probably had a pause wondering, what the hell is Greg going to ask? And are there any questions you anticipated I would ask that I haven't?
Geez, I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, Greg, I can sit here for 5 hours and talk about cases. But you know what? To me, it's interesting. To somebody else, it might be boring. And you can ask Richard Slater the same thing. I mean, we hand in hand together multiple homicide cases. Yeah. I'll say it. But that was pretty much it. I didn't think, I got I got public defender, family court, kind of like two completely separate things. But no, I appreciate you calling me in. I'm very happy. I felt sad that I missed some of the programs at the Jackson Center. The family court, I think I was retired then. And then when John Ward, you guys did that nice little thing for John, something had happened in family court, and I couldn't get to it. I missed those two things. I missed those, but I thank you for the job that you did with the Jackson Center. It's incredible that we have something like that here in Chautauqua County.
Thank you.
Really,
thank you.
Really.
Well, you can watch it all on YouTube. For those listening to this interview, what Frank's missed, you can see. It's all captured.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's great. Great.